Know what to eat, but find yourself not eating it. Perhaps you've been on diets and off again and just wonder why you can't stick to them. The Eating For You podcast, hosted by me, Sally Ann Pisk, will show you what's been missing so you can enjoy a healthier way of eating that lasts. Hi, Sally Ann with you, and I'm really happy to be welcoming back Fern Rodriguez to our podcast. Welcome, Fern.
My pleasure to be here.
Now, before we get underway, I just want to give you some background to Fern. She's a registered nutritionist with the Nutrition Society of Australia. She has a Bachelor of Food and Nutrition and is a candidate for the Master of Philosophy in Food Literacy in Early Childhood. And she's doing this through the Queensland University of Technology. She specialises in avoidant eating, which also means fussy eating in children. She lives in Katoomba, but works with families and early years educators from across the country and overseas. And now is the perfect time to have Fern join us because it's International Children's Day on June 1st. And this is a day dedicated to promoting the rights and wellbeing of children around the world. The day focuses on ensuring that children have access to education, healthcare, and protection from harm. The day is celebrated on different days around various countries, but most commonly on June 1st or November 20th, which also coincides with Universal Children's Day as declared by the United Nations. So today, Fern and I will be discussing how to bring both peace and nourishment to mealtimes, as food unfortunately can become a battleground for parents and children. So Fern, what are the common concerns parents come to you with about their children's eating habits?
Basically, there's two main concerns. They have sub-concerns, if you wish, but mostly is parents are worried if their children could be missing out on essential nutrients.
Yes.
Or how to make their children to eat foods that will have all the nutrients they need. So it's basically these two concerns. Is my child missing on anything? And how to get them to eat that. Yeah, no, because I realized very early in my working with parents that parents know what is appropriate, what is healthy food, what sort of diet their child should have. So I realized that they didn't need to spend their money with me to tell them, you have to be giving your child these sort of foods. They know. They don't need me to tell them. So as you know, I realized that I had very little to educate parents in that respect. But of course, they still welcome reassurance about, more, how can I say, structured way of posing food groups, what that means, and how to look for specific foods of each food group. So I give that kind of education, if you wish, to parents, and they like it. They like it very much. But the most common reassurance I need to actually give parents is regarding the amount that children have of each food group. And sometimes I do some assessment and I put them to like their minds to rest or not. I raise flags that we need to address. But most of their anxieties are resolved once we go through that a brief assessment about the general diet that the child is having, and usually that's the main concern that they have, if their children are eating what they should be eating roughly, and if they are missing out on
and look, that is not unlike the adult women that I obviously see through my service as well. There's a lot of knowledge out there about nutrition, but how do I actually make it work for me? And I think the big thing that I recall from working in pediatrics with children earlier in my career was definitely around the amounts, because there is some realistic expectation of how much children eat at different ages. But also, what can be concerning for some parents is that they start to see children at various ages putting on weight, not realizing that child is just getting prepared for a growth spurt. And it's quite a natural change. So you're quite right. That reassurance about amounts is so important. But let's discuss the approach in terms of how you help parents do this. And I know you phrase it like this: it's working with your child rather than for your child so they can eat healthier. So let's unpack that and sort of play around with that, what that actually means for parents and also the children.
Well, this means being more responsive than proactive in encouraging the child to eat. So there's a concept that I follow in my work that was developed by an American specialist, feeding specialist. Her name is Ellen Satter, and she came with this concept of the division of responsibility in feeding, which is basically to put the adult that cares for that child in charge of what, where, and when foods are going to be made available to their child. And then leave the child with the responsibility of eating it or not, and how much they want to eat from it. So if we manage to follow these principles at meal times, the encouragements to eat, like the words of encouragement for the child to eat this or that or more or less, go to zero. That's the goal. That's the idea. Um, yeah.
I can imagine that's challenging yeah.
Oh yes, yes. Some actually about 5 years ago now, I think, friend as a joke asked in the group to explain badly what we did for a living. And it took me 2 seconds to come up with is that my job is actually to tell parents how to behave at the table. That's pretty much what I do. It was like a moment that I realized that that's what my job comes down to most of the time when I'm working with families, because parents have been, and I'm sure we will talk more about this later. One of the biggest challenges they face is that stop encouraging the child to eat. So, because that makes them working for the child to
Mm.
eat instead of working with the child. It's not responsive. The
Yeah.
child may respond to that, but they will be following an external motivation to be doing it.
Mm.
It doesn't really teach them to like that food or that to enjoy that meal, because and that's because they feel under pressure as you're talking them into eating this or that or this way that way. And if they are not willingly doing it already, it's because they don't want to do it. And
Mm.
nobody enjoys a meal when they are forced to do something they don't want to do.
Yes.
So it's smarter if we find a way to work with the child and make them feel comfortable or remain comfortable and relaxed during meal times.
Yes.
Otherwise, they feel under pressure, they feel under coercion, and these actually physically triggers the digestive system that shuts down and it
Mm.
stops the digestion, it stops the eating. The child may reduce the amount they eat, or they may stop eating altogether. They want to leave the table because that becomes a discomfort, not relaxed environment anymore, and they want to leave.
Mm.
So it's literally puts the child in that mode of fight or flight
Yes.
when that we all feel when we are anxious and under pressure. And no one likes to have a meal when we are feeling like that.
No. And I
So
think it's really hard, Fern, because as I listen along, I think about my own experience with food as a child, and we had to eat everything on our plate. We didn't leave the table until we'd eaten it.
me
And
too.
I jokingly say to my mum now, how did you know how much I needed to eat? Because I think for me, it wasn't so much. There were some foods that I didn't like eating, and
Mm.
we might share those when we do not so much role playing, but some examples about how this approach works. But it was really the amount that, how often I felt full, and especially the reward for eating the meat and vegetables was to have dessert. And of course, every child wants to have dessert. So you literally stuffed yourself full of food so you could have dessert. And there was no way of being able to tap into how hungry I was, what I actually liked eating. It was just like, well, mealtimes was sitting at the table. The most pleasant part of our meal times that I remember was it was also a time where we all shared something that we enjoyed through the day, some highlight from our day. So it was sort of a form of communication for the family. But other than that, it was like we're there just to eat everything on our plate. And that's what it was. So I think we're dealing with that, and we're also dealing with the pressure. I want my child to eat because they'll be unwell if they don't eat. And I think it is what I have to teach many of my adult clients, that, well, actually, you may not need to eat the same amount of food every day, depending on how active you are. Maybe it's moving into spring or summer when the weather's warmer and you don't need to eat as much and you feel like lighter foods. But there's that concept that my child has to eat the same amount of food every day. So I'm sure that's a fear that you have to work with parents with, especially if you've got someone who's refusing to eat anything. It is a real worry for parents, isn't it?
Oh, yes, yes. And parents, when they finally come to me, it's because that pain has been there for years. Or it's usually when the child is like 3.5 to 5.5 years old. So they've been usually battling at every single meal time for 2 years, 3 years. And, I never judge anyone who works with me, especially the parents, because they are doing the best they can with what they have.
Yeah.
Eh? There's no mom school out there teaching how to mother, how to feed, and that you just go as you learn as you go. And so there's a lot of investigation that I have to do, and then finding the best way to approach what we need to tackle with that family in a sensible way, in a meaningful way, respectful way, because yes, there's a lot of painful feelings to be addressed by the families
Yes.
because they are doing the best they can. So I'm not there to judge them and tell
No,
them, oh, you have to do
no,
this, you have to do that.
no.
And that's why it's so important to work with the child. It actually becomes easier
Yeah.
because, for example, during dinner, all you have to do is to all you have to do is a lot easier said than done. But provide appropriate food for your child and then let them eat. Sit down, relax, enjoy the meal with them. Yes, you do that over time, as the parents do that over time. It doesn't take long. In a few days, you can see the difference. The child starts getting closer and closer to the food. So it's all about making everyone feeling, I wouldn't say happy because in the first days, in the beginning, like everyone's a bit, oh, this is different. The parents are not really 100% trusting the method because they haven't seen any progress yet. And the child is also very suspicious. And my mom is not telling me to eat my broccoli. So this is strange. This is weird.
Yeah.
But as I keep on reassuring them to keep doing their way, they start seeing change. And of course, the strategies will change depending on each case, depending on each child, the household dynamics, and how they have their meals, and a lot of other things.
Yeah.
So, but it's basically to keep meal times as relaxed and as pleasant as
As
possible.
possible. So initially, the challenge would be to obviously stop talking as a parent, I would imagine.
About the food, yes.
Yeah.
Stop talking
Stop
about the
talking
food.
about eat more. How about you try this?
Yes.
And then obviously the challenge that if they're concerned their child's not getting enough nutrition, that they've got to trust the process. Are there any other challenges that you observe and parents share with you?
It's mostly stop doing that type of verbal encouragement.
Yeah.
And then, well, they have to fill the void because then what do I talk about? So I do give them some strategies about language and conversations. But yeah, so this is the biggest challenge, to not encourage the child with words.
Yeah.
And then if the child continues to refuse to eat this or that food that the parents want them to eat, I will, depending on each case, give them strategies, like even more specific strategies, how to tackle food refusal. Like
Yes.
when the child doesn't want to eat anything at all, or when they don't want to eat something that the pediatrician or the dietitian told that is very important for their child to be having, let's say, more dairy. That your child needs to have, more dairy, and the child doesn't like dairy, or
Mm.
if there's any, because I've had a case like this that the child really needed dairy. The child didn't like dairy much.
Mm.
And because the parents had been for months bombarding this child with, you have to, but you like pressuring them, they were even more oppositional to even getting close to it. So I had to kind of revert that situation somehow.
Mm.
So it's about teaching them ways of tackling that food refusal.
Yeah.
And then that's case by case. But it's usually this, make them stop encouraging with words, and
Yes.
then encourage giving them a script, almost a script about, if the child says that, you say that. If they behave this way, you behave that way, but always following the child's lead. And that's
Yes.
what I mean about working with your child, following their lead, being more responsive.
Yes.
So I go week by week with the family in that sense. I like
Yes.
pretty much steering the wheel as we go.
That's right. And it's about the child and the parents learning their new roles at mealtimes
Exactly.
and how to support one another rather than encourage that battle or that standoff at the table. So, and I appreciate, Fern, every situation is different, the circumstances, whether there's illness involved, whether there's learning difficulties, whether there are nutritional deficiencies there, whether there's growth problems, all of these things make every family situation quite unique as well. So you've partly answered this, but is it very much about what we say to our child or to children about food, or is it how we say it? And you've partially answered this, I think, in terms of the scripts, but maybe we could use the example of broccoli because that was one of the foods that I actually ate, but I really still can remember I had troubles with the texture. The texture didn't feel friendly. It didn't feel safe to me. And again, we're all different with textures. But it was one food that I really had problems with. So if I was refusing to eat broccoli, how would you handle that if you had been my mum?
Well, if you really, really want, or your mom really, really wants you to eat broccoli, I would ask first why she wants you to eat broccoli. Because it has such and such nutrient, and I heard that is essential. Well, but other foods will have
That's
those
right.
nutrients as well. So maybe we don't fight too hard for the broccoli. What you could try as well is stop talking about, or asking your child, or asking you. I would tell your mom to stop asking you to eat broccoli, and instead talk about how she feels when she eats broccoli,
Mm,
the flavors that she feels,
mm,
or talk about characteristics of the broccoli, the shape of it,
mm,
color of it, how it grows. Do you think broccoli grow in trees?
mm.
They grow in the ground? How,
Yeah.
browse on your phone and talk, if the child, or if you you are the child in this example, if you're curious about it, talk how it grows, or about how it grows, or about other ways that we can eat broccoli. We
Mm,
can eat it raw, we can eat grated,
mm,
cooked on pizza.
mm.
Can we make a broccoli sandwich? Or, talk about the food
Yes.
in different ways. Talk
Mm.
about the characteristics of the food. Make the child curious about broccoli.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does look like a little tree. Do you think dinosaurs would eat broccoli?
Yes.
The dinosaurs that like to eat trees. Talk about it in a different way instead of trying to encourage the child. Because, as I said before, these words of encouragement actually is felt by the child, especially the child who has been picky for quite some time.
Yeah.
So the child, day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out, being told, eat this, eat more, or eat less, or,
Mm.
it's like they are sick of it. They are tired of it.
Yes.
Uh, so they don't even look or smell or pay attention to broccoli. They just don't want to remember broccoli exists.
Yes.
If you start bringing their attention to some characteristics of broccoli, they may get curious. Oh,
Yes.
yeah, does it grow in the ground? Does it grow in trees? Oh,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
would
And
think, I
and I think what I picked up there too is that, especially your example of pizza, all of a sudden, I mean, I do put broccoli on my pizzas, but, I could imagine a child maybe a little bit further along the process saying, oh, I might like to try broccoli on pizza.
There you go.
That is, as you were saying, developing that curiosity and encouraging that curiosity about the food and thinking, oh, wow, I couldn't imagine, broccoli on a pizza, So yeah, that approach makes a lot of sense. And it also, I think it's important because food does grow. Food has to be harvested, has to come from somewhere. Not all foods originated in Australia, like some have come from Asia.
Or a coast.
That's right. That's right. And of course, having grown up in a family where we grew food, I understood that process as a child. But a lot of people, their experience of food is what they buy at the supermarket, and,
Exactly.
and it doesn't go much beyond that. Having said that, I think there's a lot of wonderful veggie garden projects in schools and things like that now to encourage children to get that experience of growing food. But yeah, I can see how this approach is very much tailored to the family to increase that curiosity, which interestingly is a very important part of mindful eating, being curious about food and how it makes us feel and how much we need to eat. And it also takes away the judgment of food. Like I may not like the taste of broccoli when it's steamed, but maybe I would like it baked or I would like it, on a pizza.
For example, the broccoli, you might maybe know that, maybe notice that. It took me a long time to notice that, for example, the stems are sweeter than the
Yeah.
florets.
Yeah.
Children know that.
Yeah.
I actually learned that pretty much. I should say, yeah, that's how I learned from children because I noticed that many children eat the stem gladly, but will not touch the floret.
Yeah.
Bang. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think also too that innately we're wary of eating foods that may have a bit of a bitter flavor as well, because bitter things could be poisonous. So children, in my case, it wasn't so much the
absolutely.
flavor, it was the texture, but certainly some flavors children are going to be wary of because they're more bitter. And also I think the struggle with eating, sort of going back to before you start supporting the family, is that if the child has learnt also, well, if I don't eat this plate of food, mum will give me something else afterwards. And I have heard this from my clients who are trying to get on the mindful eating journey themselves. And of course, inadvertently, obviously, everyone else's eating habits in the family come up. And it's like, well, my son, has certain preferences and, he gets a different meal to the rest of the family. And of course, that's not sustainable either. So, Fern, how do you manage when you hear the story of, well, he wouldn't or she wouldn't eat the vegetables, so I gave them a toasted cheese sandwich instead and they ate that?
I get that a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I am responsible for what is available at the meal, but I can't have all the things that I want him to eat in that meal because he's not going to touch it. And I'll have to go and make a sandwich for him. Well, put the sandwich on the menu. So the idea is the adult is responsible for the menu.
Mm,
Okay. If you have that situation that the child refuses to eat what is on the menu, I want something else, you actually transferring the child that
that's
responsibility. They are deciding about what is on the menu. That's wrong.
right.
It's your responsibility.
Yeah.
And the more you keep that rule strict, the quicker results you will have with the child becoming interested in the food.
Mm,
But
mm,
the smart way of doing it is to having in that meal at least one item.
yeah.
Is it bread? Okay, so you have bread at every meal.
Yeah.
Even if the child will eat just the bread for the first time you're doing this, and the parents really cringe when I say that,
Mm,
just let it be. Let them eat as
yeah.
much bread as they want. And if that's
Mm,
only the bread, that's only the bread. Let them go to bed, forget about it. The next meal, if they are hungry,
yeah.
the next meal they will eat. They are not going to starve to death. Trust me,
No.
you do that a few times, usually just a couple of times, is like, no, this is what we're having for this meal. This is what we have for
Yeah.
lunch or for dinner or whatever. Nothing else is coming out of the kitchen, of the
Mm,
cabinet or the fridge. You can choose. There's here one or two things that you like. You can eat one of those
mm,
or both of those, but there's nothing else.
yeah.
There's no something else.
Yeah.
Okay, the more you stick to that, the quicker results you start having, like to
Mm,
enlarge the variety of the
yes.
child's intake. And
Yes.
that's because they like this power that you give into them. Like you can decide whatever you want to eat that is here at the table. It's your decision. I'm not going to tell you how
Yeah.
much to eat, what to eat. You decide. They enjoy that, so they stay at the table.
Mm,
They actually pay attention to the other foods available. They can watch the other members of the family eating those foods. They
mm,
can smell it. And that's very important. That's what starts to sparkle that curiosity.
yeah.
Oh, maybe that's actually not that bad. Look, my little sister is enjoying it so much. And
Yeah.
then the next day, they see the little sister eating that again and enjoying and
Mm,
licking her little fingers. Oh, maybe I'll give it a try because I've worked with quite a lot of children that they don't even know what's on offer because they are given another plate with a different food that mom made, being a sandwich or pasta with tuna or whatever else.
yeah.
So they don't have to pay attention to what else is on offer because they are eating their plain pasta here.
Yeah.
So that make a lot of a difference to sparkle this curiosity about other foods. But yeah, parents that follow, and trust the process, and they go, okay, this is what we have for this meal. There's no replacement, nothing else coming out of the kitchen.
Mm,
Sometimes there's a little tantrum, and I tell parents, if hell breaks open, fine, give in
yeah.
and then we talk about it tomorrow. But if you stick to that, the more you stick to that, the more quickly you see change.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it makes sense because, as you said, the child has the power to choose what they're going to eat. They're not being forced to eat everything on their plate anymore. And when they see that their plate contains the same foods or very similar foods to what everyone else is eating, because not everyone might want to eat bread with their meal. So, yeah, they can actually sit back and see what other people are doing and saying, oh, well, they're eating those foods. And as you said, they hadn't noticed that before. So, what does the ideal meal look like or the experience of the meal? And again, I think we've touched on a lot of this, but I thought it would be nice just to create that vision of what a meal can be like for everyone who's sitting at the table.
Yeah. So a lot of people, I am asked that question quite often, and people get shocked when I don't mention food at all. I don't care what you put on the table for the moment.
Mm,
uh, unless later on we are ready to tackle that and the child has deficiencies.
yes.
But if we don't have the situation, I don't care what goes on the table. But I will say that if you have a table for meals, that's a very good place to start. It's important to have family meals, to have the child with one or all the adults in the house to sit down at the table and enjoy a meal together. It doesn't have to be every single meal. It doesn't have to be every single day. Research actually shows that at least 3 meals in a week makes a lot of difference to a child's intake
Yeah.
and their food education. In fact, there's even research that shows that the child improves in cognitive skills, their vocabulary improves, and they have better health for many years to come, not just during childhood, because they have at least 3 meals with the family. Instead of the outcomes are better than children that have their meals alone.
Mm.
And the ideal meal to me, and that's what I encourage the families that work with me and also the educators in childcare and in preschools. Sit down, have a few minutes. It doesn't have to be actually the entire meal, but like sit down, see, let the child see the foods that you're eating, how you eat, so they learn how to use cutlery, how to eat salads, how to eat soups, because they are observing the adults. Children learn a lot from
Yes.
mimicking, observing the adults that they trust and respect. So show them how it's done. Don't put any pressure for
Mm.
them to eat this or that. Just sit down, enjoy the meal, tell stories about the day, tell jokes, make plans together, enjoy that moment as a family. So the whole family eating together is ideal.
Yeah.
But again, if you have just one adult of the house having meals with the children, it already makes a lot of difference to that children or to those children eating, not just for that moment, but like this is actually there's a name for it. It's food education. This is part of my research.
Yeah.
It's part of food literacy, and children learn that from the adults.
Yeah.
So there's no better meal to me than that.
Yeah.
Adults and children enjoying a meal together.
Yeah. And I think also too, when you look at various research, and I had certainly seen the health benefits of children and teenagers when family meals were held together as well. But also, if we look at the other end of our life and the benefits throughout our lifetime, when we look at the research into the Blue Zone communities, that sharing at meal times and that sense of community and support are really additional ingredients to eating that we don't think of because we get so focused on, oh, well, if I had my protein, if I had my carbohydrate, if I had all my vitamins, if I had all my minerals, yeah, sure, they're important, but there's those other aspects of mealtime when you're sharing with others that offer so much to our well-being and to our longevity. So certainly enjoyment is a big part of it, as you have emphasized today.
Ellen Satter, that woman I mentioned before, that
Mm.
American dietitian who created the concept of uh, division of the responsibilities, she said something that I love, that enjoy meal times and nutrition will follow.
Yeah.
So that's it. Oh my God! Sometimes it feels like magic when that happens.
Mm.
Like that first meal that the family experience, that the child is actually eating something that they didn't eat last week or last
Yeah.
month or their entire life. They never really tried that food. And then it's when the parents actually, okay, this works, and they keep doing more of it.
Yes.
uh, it feels like magic, but it's not. It's just that you're giving the child that safe space
Mm.
to eat what they want and not to eat what they are not ready to eat. And they appreciate that unconsciously. They don't say thanks, mom, for leaving me alone. They are not fully aware of it, but they feel relieved. They feel, "Oh, I can actually now just eat my chicken nuggets, and there's no one talking me into eating the broccoli. I don't want to eat the broccoli
Mm.
today, but maybe next week they will feel curious enough to give it a try."
Yeah.
And when that happens, the family isolated, and they call me, and everyone is it's a happy day for everyone,
Yes.
but mostly for the child that is enjoying food,
Yeah.
whereas they were not enjoying that before. So that's the job that I do, just guide parents and educators to allow children to enjoy food and
Yes.
not see food as a chore, as something that I have to eat because it's good for me. Ah,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
it's so much more than that.
Yes, it certainly is. So, Fern, what would you suggest to our listeners today if there was one thing you could encourage them to start doing with their children or their grandchildren? What would that be?
Well, I think I feel like a broken record most of the time. Is try tonight to prepare a meal. If you do happen to have a very picky eater in the house that eats just like a handful of foods, have one of those foods in this meal.
Mm.
Put the food on the table, call everyone for dinner, sit down with the child or with your children, enjoy the meal. Don't talk about the food. Don't encourage them to eat anything. Just let them be. See
Mm.
how it goes. It's a very surprising moment to a lot of my clients.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And it's nearly what some people would call reverse psychology. But in many ways it's not, because I think earlier when you're talking about the pressure that children feel when we're wanting them to do something they don't want to do, it's very similar to how we talk about natural horsemanship and working in partnership with your horse. Because if they feel pressured to do something, they will either rear up and launch at you or they will want to run away. And I could really relate to that because I've seen animals in that situation. And yeah, just invite the child to participate in the meal and without that forcing to eat certain foods makes a lot of sense in terms of making that relaxed and calm environment. Because when there's food wars going on, it's the opposite. And as you said, that fight or flight comes on and the whole digestive process just switches off because that's what it's designed to do. There's no point thinking about eating or going to the toilet when you've got to run away for your life, because that's why the
Yeah,
body turns everything off. It's like, I've got to get out of here. So
exactly.
it's the opposite effect to what we want at mealtime. So, Fern, thanks for explaining all of that. If people have been listening today and want to learn more about this division of responsibility and the way that you work with families, how can people reach out to you?
Well, I have a website. I think you may have the link to it on the show
Yep.
notes, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, because whatever I say now, people may forget.
Yes.
So my business name is Eat, Play, Learn Nutrition. And on the website, I have for people to subscribe to a free help. Free. It's a training for 5 weeks.
Yep.
It includes an ebook with information, more detail about what I was talking about today, the division of responsibility, how to conduct times. So there's what I call my top 5 strategies to stop fussy eating
Yeah.
at home. So that's downloadable. It's free. And then I send every week an email with more detail about how to implement every strategy, all 5 strategies week by week.
Yes.
And families usually like that very much. So
Yes.
and that's on the website. Anyone can download and
Yeah.
subscribe to that.
No,
And
I,
that's a good place to start. Yes.
yes. And I will make sure that those links are available with this episode's notes.
Great. Thank you.
So before we finish up, Fern, is there anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, I really like to remind parents over and over. And I try to use different words because sometimes different words click with different people,
That's right.
So I like this way of saying, instead of saying stop harassing your child, I work with your child,
Yeah.
be more responsive. if they are not yet eating the foods you want them to eat, is because they are not ready for it. So try to have an environment that is more conducive for them to raise that curiosity, that willingness to try new foods. And a good way of doing that is following the division of responsibility. So there's not much else that I can tell a parent who hasn't started to address fussy eating yet. They are having that pain, but they are not really sure about what to do about that. Try to learn more about the division of responsibility. That's the best advice I can give any parent at that stage.
Yes.
My website is full of resources, free resources that explains in different ways. I
Yes.
have different blog articles that I touch the same topic, as I said, like a broken record, but I sing different songs in
Yes.
each track of that record, trying to explain in different ways.
Yeah.
So hopefully you will find one way that resonates with you and it applies to your unique family.
Yeah. Fern, thanks again for sharing with us and making those resources available. If you've been listening today and you've enjoyed this episode, please let us know and share the link on your social media pages. And I look forward to sharing with you again next week. You have been listening to the Eating for You podcast with Sally Ann Pisk. If a long-term way of healthier eating is of interest to you, then make sure you subscribe to our podcast.